Good afternoon, everyone. I've got just about 1 o'clock on the dot here, so I'm going to get started with some preliminaries, and we'll get started with our presentation in just a moment. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy day to be with us this afternoon. My name is Jerry LeBlanc. I am a retirement planner and communications training coordinator with the Teachers Retirement System of Georgia. And again, want to thank all of you all for attending this afternoon for our virtual, what we call new member presentation workshop. As you notice on my screen, you all should be able to see my screen with a PowerPoint presentation, and you'll notice we've got a lot of different resources that are available to you guys so that you're able to view our presentations, get all kinds of different information that we have available to you all through different platforms such as Facebook, Twitter. Of course, the Teacher Retirement System website is your primary resource, YouTube, Spotify as well. So if you would like to, you can scan over the QR codes and follow us on those different platforms. So definitely do so. I appreciate my audience here with via Cisco WebEx. So I've got some individuals that will be viewing this presentation via the Cisco WebEx application, but also have individuals that will be viewing us live on Facebook and YouTube Live as well. So definitely appreciate all the different platforms that we have available to get information to you all. So the format of this presentation is interesting from the standpoint that many of you in the audience, and of course, doing this in this virtual world, I'm not at the advantage of being able to actually see my audience and kind of gauge who I actually have in my audience. So that's kind of a disadvantage on my end. But typically, this audience is usually going to be individuals who are freshly starting their career, so 0 years in until maybe 10 years in what we call vested. And I'll go over that terminology momentarily. But that's typically my audience, but also I may have audience members who are not necessarily new in the education field, so to speak, maybe new in a particular school system, but not necessarily new in the education field. Maybe you've been in the state of Georgia in the education field previously and left. So I'll talk about some of that. Interestingly, just last week, I was doing one of these presentations actually in person, and I was on the state border with Tennessee. So I had several individuals who were in the education field who had come over from the state of Tennessee over to Georgia. So I'll talk about, if you've been out of state, some different things that you want to be considering in regard to that as well. But again, the crux of this presentation, it's kind of a 50%. Let's talk about teacher retirement system. Let's talk about retirement a little bit. But then about 50% of it, we're going to talk about some of the other pieces to your retirement financial planning equation that you want to be thinking about. So we should be able to cover different topics for a lot of different people in our audience. So definitely listen up, utilize the chat feature for questions. We'll try to monitor that, get your questions answered as we can, and then also follow up as well. So again, just to reintroduce myself, for anyone that's just logging in, my name is Jerry LeBlanc, retirement planner, trainer with Teacher Retirement System. Been with the retirement system for about 14 years now, and I represent our outreach portion of our organization. So typically in kind of our normal world, so to speak, we've always reached out to our valued members and discuss all kinds of different retirement planning topics, from individuals who are right on retirement to further out, like most of this audience would be. But also pre-COVID, and of course, obviously, with COVID having to make adjustments, we were really on the cutting edge of beginning to increase our technology usage and offerings to you all as well. You guys are very valuable to us as the state of Georgia, dedicating your life as educators within the state of Georgia. So we definitely appreciate that. And then also, too, we really take financial literacy very seriously with Teacher Retirement System. So we definitely want to educate you all and hopefully be a conduit throughout your whole career, so that you'll have a successful retirement when that time is actually upon you. So we'll go ahead and get started with our presentation now. And so first and foremost, before I discuss really any topics related to the retirement, really the most important concept that you'll want to understand is the fact that you've got a true pension plan, something called a 401A plan. And what the 401A is, many times people are familiar with the terminology 401k, may not be familiar with exactly what it is, but a 401k is a retirement investment account that you'll have access to in the private sector world. So, many times people talk about that. One thing most individuals don't have access to and don't discuss as much is a 401A, which is a true pension plan. That's something that you have through being an educator in the state of Georgia through the teacher retirement plan. Something very valuable. In fact, I would say invaluable to your life planning and retirement planning goals. Reason being is, many times people remember a day when the individuals would start a job, they would work 20 to 30 years, and then they would have kind of the golden parachute at the end of their career, which would be a pension. And to be quite frank with you, pension plans are expensive to maintain. So a lot of private sector entities have reduced or gotten rid of those altogether, and they put a lot of the retirement planning on the employee themselves. And that's where the 401k advent. And that's not to say that a 401k is not a very good retirement plan to have, but it does put a lot of the stress and responsibility on the employee to fund their retirement. Whereas, yes, you do have a piece to the equation in your retirement planning with, or actually a couple of pieces to the equation in your retirement planning, but a large part of your retirement savings is already going to be done by being a member in the teacher retirement system. And while I'm on the subject of membership, so you are an employee of whatever school system that you're with, or entity that you're with within the TRS framework. What we call you as a relationship with teacher retirement system is member. So you are a member of the teacher retirement system, and being a member has the privileges of eventually being accessible to a lifetime retirement benefit. So we'll talk about your benefit. I'll break down how the formula works, and also creditable service. So again, just to kind of reiterate, teacher retirement is another financial jargon, so to speak, is defined benefit plan. So that's what the teacher retirement plan is. It's a defined benefit plan. Same thing as what I was saying, a 401A, that's the tax coding for the type of retirement plan that you'll have. And it's in easy to understand terms, it's a true pension plan. It's based on a benefit formula, and we'll talk about the formula here in just a moment. And then a great piece to this is, once you hit certain eligibility criteria, that you'll have a lifetime benefit available to you and potentially to beneficiaries as well. Now, you'll make that decision way down the line, but I'll give you a brief description on that momentarily as well. So the formula encompasses your years of creditable service multiplied times 2%. So whatever number of TRS creditable service you have, you'll multiply that times 2. That gives you a certain percentage. You take that percentage, you multiply that times a high average salary, and that equals your basic monthly benefit under what's called Plan A maximum plan. So just to give you an easy to understand example, again, far down the line for some of you all, but most people kind of pinpoint 30 years as a sizable retirement time frame career. So 30 years of TRS creditable service multiplied times 2, that will yield someone 60% of their high average salary. In this case, the high average salary is $5,536.83 monthly, and that equals the basic monthly benefit of $3,322.10. The maximum number of years of TRS creditable service you can accrue in the formula is 40 years. So whatever number of years you have, magic number is 10. So you got to have 10 for anything. And I'll emphasize that in just a moment. But 10 makes you vested. And then beyond that, you take your number of years, you multiply it times 2. That gives you your percentage of what you're going to draw as a max benefit. Your retirement benefit is subject to applicable taxes and deductions. So you'll have, generally speaking, federal taxes, state taxes, and also, generally speaking, you're able to keep the state health benefit plan coverage. So if you have the health insurance coverage going into retirement, you may be able to keep that coverage. And also, depending on the number of years you have, and also the criteria at that time, because teacher retirement system does not administer or manage the health insurance benefit. So to get clear understanding of what your health benefits would be down that line, of course, you would want to clarify that with the what's called SHBP, State Health Benefit Plan. But again, generally speaking, you're able to keep the health insurance as well. So that's a very good piece to the equation. Not only do you have the retirement benefit, but, one thing for sure is having your income, whatever that income stream is going to be very important. But then there are other benefit packages that go along with that you want to be aware of in making sure that you make the best career path choices as well. Because, of course, as we know, and I'll emphasize this in a couple of other slides as well, as we know, as educators, there's not that gold bar, so to speak. So you're not necessarily making the money on the back end. And of course, there's some things that you can do throughout your career that can up that salary. But I mean, hardly anyone or no one's really getting rich at the public education level. But on the retirement end, you have access again to this true pension. And also, many times in the private sector, you're not going to have as good access to your health insurance benefits as well. So again, pieces to the equation that you want to be thinking about early on in your life and your career that helps you to make the decisions on what you want to do long term. So this gives you an idea of the number of years multiplied times 2, and that gives it, yields a certain percentage. So in this particular case, or in these examples, 10 years would yield someone 20% of their high average salary. 15 years would yield 30%, so on and so forth, up to a maximum of 40 years, which would yield 80%. So again, just using those numbers gives you kind of an idea of how that would work. Another great benefit to the teacher retirement plan is that and I mentioned this earlier, so let me kind of backtrack on this particular point as well, is in the private sector, as I mentioned, the 401k, you have a lot of the responsibility and stress of am I saving enough towards my retirement? On most of it is on yourself. Whereas in the teacher retirement plan, having a true pension, the majority of the savings for your retirement benefit is done for you. Now, you do have some piece to the equation, and that's what this alludes to. So there's a 6% TRS contribution on your gross salary that comes directly to TRS. So some of you may be literally starting off your career early on, and you may get that first, maybe you haven't even gotten the first check. You get that first check and you say, well, what is the 6% deal that's coming out to this TRS place? Well, eventually that 6% gross amount that's coming out is going to seem like very little in relation to what you're going to get over the long term. But another immediate benefit way before retirement is you're reducing your tax liability. So in this particular example, this individual makes $3,750 a month. But of course, they've got to pay a 6% contribution on that amount. That money is pre-tax, so that's $225 a month. So as far as Uncle Sam is concerned, this individual makes $3,525. So they haven't paid less in the way of taxes. Your TRS contributions are credited to your account, and you earn interest on your contributions as well. And I'll come back to that point in just a moment. So when can I retire? So again, the large part of this audience is going to be a good ways away. Again, not knowing exactly how our audience is encompassed, I'll give you a little bit more detail on the service retirement, particularly. So, because I may have some individuals who are maybe closer in than the majority of the audience. But that being said, normal service retirement is kind of what most folks will pinpoint on. 30 years of TRS creditable service, regardless of age, allows for an individual to be retirement eligible. 10 years of service coupled with 60 years of age is the other piece to the criteria. So for some of you all who are maybe just starting off your career, maybe you're fresh out of college, 22, 23, 24 years old, you're hitting that 30-year mark around 52 to 54 years old, realistically, you're able to retire at that point. And so that's not out of the ordinary for our retirees to retire much younger than a general U.S. population. If you're not going to have the 30 years of service, maybe you starting your career off later, maybe you got some breaks in service, who knows what life is going to bring for some individuals down the line. So you may need to move around some. So maybe you're not realistically going to hit 30 years. The magic number for any retirement benefit under teacher retirement is 10 years. So once you've got 10 years of TRS creditable service, then the other piece to the equation is 60 years of age. Now, just keep in mind, going back to the formula, remember, the more years you have, the larger the percentage of what your draw is. So just keep that in mind that, yes, both parties are eligible, but the 10-year person is going to draw 20% versus the 30-year person drawing 60% max. So that's normal service retirement. There's also an early retirement option if an individual has at least 25 years. So quite frankly, you've got to be pretty close to your normal eligibility before you're eligible for the early retirement. And there's also a monetary penalty. So just keep that in mind that could negate a few reasons that you may want to retire under the early retirement. But that is an option on the table once an individual has 25 years of TRS creditable service. There's also a disability retirement option as well. Again, 10 years magic number. And then if a disability occurred, there's some proof that needs to be sent in, and then there's an evaluation process. If the individual is approved, then they would be able to retire without a penalty. There's, as far as picking a plan option, so again, down the line for many of you all, but just to give you a base of how you want to be thinking about, and also while I'm on this subject as well, again, although many of you all are going to be a good ways away from retirement eligibility, this part of the equation is still very important because, again, the stress of knowing I don't have to save so much on my end towards my retirement because I know I have this pension plan that's working for me. You've got that piece to the equation already taken care of, so you can concentrate on other avenues, in which I'll talk about a little bit further on the second half of my presentation. But just to give you a basic idea of how the benefit works, there's two types of plans that you would want to consider. There's a non-survivorship option. So that would be, I don't have anyone that I really need to be thinking about long-term financially. I want to get the most out of this retirement benefit, but I understand that I'm not going to leave a monthly benefit to a surviving beneficiary. So non-survivorship plan. That's Plan A maximum plan and Plan B option 1. Then there's survivorship plans, which I do know I need to leave someone a monthly benefit over the course of, if I'm not here, they're going to be in maybe a financial situation where they're going to need my income. So maybe I make that choice. And so again, based on my personal circumstances, closer into retirement, but again, all throughout your career as well, you want to be making certain financial and retirement planning decisions along the line, knowing that you've got these two options on the table for yourself and family, friend, whoever your beneficiary is. So TRS creditable service is encompassed by 3 different pieces to this pie. And so you'll notice that I've used the word TRS creditable service, and I'm putting emphasis on the word creditable quite a bit. The reason being is as I mentioned at the very beginning of my presentation, some of you all are just starting off fresh. This is your first job, maybe starting off early career. So, this is what you have at this point. But some of you all have come from other places. You've been in the education field in another state. You've been in a private school. Maybe you had previously been in a TRS covered position. The thing that you want to consider and make sure that you understand about your TRS creditable service is it is your service credit that you've earned while you've been a member of the teacher retirement system of Georgia. So that's particularly important to understand. So oftentimes you'll look at, those of you that actually have a contract, and it'll be in black and white, certain number of years on that contract. And so oftentimes that's referring to experience, not your TRS retirement credit. So you may have, and I'm just using this as an example, maybe you've been in the education field in another state, for instance. So 5 years, I'm going to use 5 years as my example. And then you come here in the state of Georgia, and the school system that you're working for, they give you, they're putting your salary tier, so to speak, at commensurate with 5 years of education experience. Well, that 5 years of education experience was not rendered and nor paid into the retirement system here in Georgia. So just keep that in mind, is that your experience is separate from your TRS service credit. And I like to make that point well in advance of someone's career, because I tell you, it's often enough that I meet with individuals right on retirement, and I'm just using this as an example. I'm speaking to someone and I'm telling them they have 27 years of TRS service, and they're saying, no, this is my year 29, this is my year 30. And then throughout the conversation, oh yeah, okay, that 2 or 3 years, that's from when I was in Wyoming, when I was in public education in Wyoming, or wherever. And so that does not automatically correlate. So you don't want to be in a situation where you think that you are either retirement eligible or have more years of TRS service than what you actually have. And I've had that experience with too many individuals, particularly recently, where individuals were maybe not in a position to be able to retire, although they were eligible, but not financially in a situation where they're able to retire. And that's why we really want to put a lot of emphasis on some of these points with this audience now, so that you're coming to us, you understand where you're at, you ask the questions that need to be asked, so that you are preparing and prepared for retirement when that time is right for yourself. So again, going back to the service credit, membership service is the first piece to the equation. That is you working a TRS covered position at least half-time or greater. So whatever is considered full-time for your job, if you're working half-time or greater, and assuming you are eligible for TRS membership, I'm not going to go into great detail about what positions are eligible and which are not. I'll give you a basic rundown. In the public school system, most positions are TRS eligible, with the exception of bus drivers, cafeteria personnel, maintenance, warehouse, and a few other exceptions to that rule. But for the most part, if you're working at least half-time or greater, then you are eligible, and quite frankly, at the local school system, required to be a TRS member. Excuse me. At the at some other entities, because we cover public colleges, universities, technical colleges, library systems. There's a wider array of those positions, but there are other retirement benefits that are eligible as well. But assuming you are a TRS member, 9 months equals a year across the board for pretty much everyone, with the exception of 8-month university faculty. So that's your membership service. Then there's a purchase service piece to the equation as well. Actually, before I hit the purchase service, let me go to the unused sick leave. So in addition to your membership service, you will accrue unused sick leave. Typically for school building personnel, for instance, they're going to earn typically 12.5 days maximum per year. It's 1.25 per month. So 12.5 per year. There's some administrative positions that will earn anywhere between 13.75 115 days maximum per year. So that will accrue over the course of your career. You want to definitely be building that up, because it is not out of the ordinary for individuals to be able to retire a year or so earlier than they would have been technically eligible, because they had enough sick leave to bridge with their actual years of TRS creditable service, plus the sick leave may get them to where they need to or want to be. Now, you do have to be vested, so you have to have the 10 years actually rendered before the sick leave will apply. So the sick leave won't get you to being vested. But once you've got the 10 years of sick leave, 10 years of creditable service, then we'll add the sick leave on, at your retirement eligibility. You can also possibly purchase service towards your retirement benefit. Now, typically, you can't just arbitrarily buy service. So sometimes I have individuals say, well, I want to buy some service in. And so my next retort usually is, well, what type of service are we talking about? So just to give you a basic rundown, most of the services that are eligible are based upon you having been in the education field capacity to some degree. So there's TRS withdrawn service, when an individual had worked in a TRS covered position at some point in their career. There's out-of-state service, where an individual was in a public school system in another state, and that position would have made them eligible had it been in Georgia. They can possibly purchase that time. There's a study leave credit, where somebody took off time to go get an advanced degree, and maybe there was a bridge that they need to fill in. So that can possibly be purchased. There's a few other types of services that aren't necessarily tied into education, like active duty military service. So a place to find some of the types of services that are available, TRS website kind of is your first point of reference for really anything TRS related. So www.trsga.com, and you're able to access, first of all, you'll want to sign up for an account, so a username and password. And I'm going to give you some additional points of emphasis on that in just a moment. But while I'm on the subject, you'll utilize the website, and you can find out about the different types of services that are available and what we call initiating factors. So what do you need to do to initiate finding out whether or not you can purchase that service or not? You can purchase it by rolling the money over from a qualified retirement plan. That's your easiest way to do it, but you can also do it by check or money order as well. This gives you an idea of the sick leave credit. Again, 1 year, 170 days, 9 months equals a year across the board for the most part. So that's kind of the pinpoint on 1 year, 170 days. Most school systems will calculate your sick leave in terms of hours. So you have to have a minimum of 60 days or 480 hours to use towards retirement. But once you hit that mark, you definitely want to continue to accrue that unused sick leave on. And this slide here gives you a really good synopsis of why you want to utilize or do not want to utilize your sick leave as much. I mean, obviously, if you need to, that's what it's there for. But in the long term, what it would benefit you for retirement purposes. So both of these parties had the same number of years of service and the same high average salary, but Mary is going to draw $160 more per month for the rest of her life versus Tom, who used all of his unused sick leave. She's accruing her TRS retirement benefit at 27.778 years, although she actually only rendered 26 years because she's utilizing 1.778 years of unused sick leave. So the importance of being vested and terminating employment and also beneficiaries are the next three subjects that we'll discuss. Being vested, as I've mentioned before, means that you have to have 10 years of TRS creditable service. So that's the magic number that we all want to be shooting for sure. Once you hit the 10 years of service, obviously there's career movement, decisions that you'll want to make. But I want to give you some really good rules of thumb that you want to be thinking about in terms of career movement and your relationship with the teacher retirement system as well. So you leave employment at some point. One of my kind of rules of thumb, so to speak, is if you're not vested, so you don't have the 10 years of service, then you're not going to be eligible for a retirement benefit at any point down the line unless you come back and meet at least that 10-year mark. But even that being said, let's say you have 5 years of TRS service credit and you decide to leave employment. In my opinion, if you can, leave your account with TRS for the first 4 years of your termination of employment. You're still considered, as far as the retirement plan is considered, you're still considered active. So that's one reason why you would want to leave your account with TRS, is because your account is still considered active at that point. And if you come back sometime within that 4-year period of time, you just pick up where you left off. So it's basically a seamless move. Maybe you left for 2 years, do something else, decide you want to come back in the education field, then you just pick up where you left off. So that's one reason. But secondly, even if you decide, I'm never coming back, I don't have the 10 years, so I'm not going to be eligible for retirement benefit, that money that you paid in, the 6% contribution that we talked about earlier, is going to continue to accrue interest over that first 4-year period of time. So you come back 4 years later and decide to take your money out, you're going to leave with more than you left with. So that's 2 reasons why I think it's really a wise decision to give yourself that room to figure out whether or not you really want to be in the education field or not. Now, if an individual is vested, meaning they have 10 plus years of service, then again, my opinion, and certainly it's your decision to make one way or the other, but in my opinion, there's little to no reason for an individual to withdraw their account, because eventually they are going to be eligible for retirement benefit. That eventually might be 10, 15 years down the road, but eventually they are going to be eligible for that retirement benefit. And so you don't want to put yourself in a situation where maybe you wind up having to work longer because your retirement benefit is not as funded because you took your money out. So I'll give you a quick example, and this is a real life example of a good friend of mine who is an educator, and this is going back to 2017, had been in the education field for 17 years, decided that no longer wanted to be in the education field and decided to withdraw their account. Withdrew their account, so got the money out minus taxes, and also had to pay an additional tax penalty because he was under 59 and a half, so he had some additional tax penalty to go along with that, but withdrew his account, so that 17 years of his career was gone as far as retirement is concerned. Individual winds up coming back about a year in or a year later, and at that point starts over from scratch. So starting over from zero at that point. Now, it's not all lost. Once the individual has been back in the system at least 3 years, they're able to reestablish that account by paying us the money that we paid them plus interest on that money. And, quite frankly, they need to jump on it as quickly as they possibly can, because that interest is what's going to drive that cost up. And typically, you're going to pay double, maybe even more than double what you wind up getting out to begin with. So again, a vested individual, absolutely, in most cases, it's not going to benefit them to withdraw their account. I mean, it may feel good on the front end that I've got this money available. And of course, individual decision. So certainly it's up to you what you decide to do. What you'll absolutely have to do in order to request a withdrawal of funds from teacher retirement is we have you speak directly with teacher retirement system. So we'll give you all the facts, and then, kind of the ball's in your court on the decision making from that standpoint. And there's a refund of contributions process that it goes through, and then you'll be able to receive those funds either directly, but you'll have to take the tax hit, or roll that money over to a qualified retirement plan in that particular case. So this example gives, from a standpoint of an individual who left their money in and then eventually decided to draw the retirement benefit versus someone who withdrew their funds. So in the first column, 17-year career times 2% times a high average salary of $5,761 is going to yield that person $1,959 a month for the rest of their life. So I believe, let's see, in this example, it was going to be about a 15-year gap before they were going to be able to draw that benefit, but eventually they were going to draw that benefit at age 60 for the rest of their life. Versus taking the money out, they got a refund of just under $64,000 before taxes. So they had to pay taxes on that money. They forego that lifetime benefit unless they decide to come back in the teacher retirement system. They got to be back at least 3 years, and then they've got to pay us the money that was paid plus interest on that money. And going back to my real life example, which is similar to this example here, the individual that I'm speaking of, they were going to be able to retire had they kept the trajectory of their initial career, probably around 52, 53 years of age. Realistically, reestablishing that account and how much money they're going to be able to utilize to reestablish that account, they're probably going to have to work longer. More realistically, looking at retiring probably around 60 years of age. And again, real life example, in fact, I just had a conversation. Obviously, I'm not going to name my friend in the example, but just had a conversation with him just yesterday evening, discussing kind of a plan of action for reestablishing that account. So definitely want to jump on that as soon as you possibly can, but also understanding that you may have to extend how long you're going to have to work. And while we're on that subject, again, we want to make sure that we're helping you all be able to establish really good retirement planning strategies so that you're able to retire when you really want to. It's got to be very frustrating to get to a certain point in your life career where you could, in terms of eligibility, be able to retire, but in terms of financially speaking, maybe not being in a position to do so. So we want to help you all as much as we possibly can to give you the tools so that you're able to make those decisions long term that are going to help you out and be at the points that you want to be at. So I mentioned this a little earlier in terms of beneficiaries, as far as establishing your account on the TRS website. So those of you who are like really brand new in your TRS career, you may not even have been or may not be to the point where you have access to the TRS website, other than obviously the information that's available just on the World Wide Web in general. But your specific information, within about 2 months after your start date, you'll be able to create an account on the TRS website, and then you can add your beneficiaries. And we absolutely encourage you to do that for a number of different reasons. Although some of you may be years away from retirement, life is what it is, and you want to be preparing for the long term. So you want to have your beneficiaries in place. And as things adjust in your life, you can certainly adjust those on the TRS website. So whoever you want to name, doesn't have to be any type of relation, in terms of familial, but whoever you want to name as beneficiary, absolutely, you need to have a primary beneficiary and a secondary beneficiary. And, as they sound like, primaries in place first and foremost, secondaries in place just in case. So now we want to transition from talking about the retirement plan so much, although I am going to add some pieces to that equation as well, but we really want to talk about how you supplement your TRS retirement benefit. So you want to ask yourself several different types of questions in regard to what are my long-term goals? So what are my long-term financial goals? How will I achieve those? Have I established other retirement investment accounts? So long-term financial goals, again, audience could encompass a number. I'm sure I have a pretty diverse audience here. So it could be individuals who are closer in, but still have some financial ducks that they need to get in a row, so to speak. And then I may have some individuals who are brand new, have very little knowledge about financial, setting financial goals. Maybe that individual hasn't bought their first car, their first home, been married, had their first child. So those types of things, are those my goals? Because, it's funny saying that there is obviously a financial element to the marriage and child equation as well. So to kind of lump those into that category may sound odd, but you certainly want to make sure, am I in a financial position to be able to get married? Am I in a financial position to have children? So you want to make sure that those long-term goals are able to be met, just like we're talking about on the retirement end, so that you're not at points in your life where you're not able to reach those milestones that you want to be reaching. Again, frustration is kind of a theme word that I'm using in this presentation. As I mentioned, it has to be frustrating to be eligible for retirement, but not be in a financial position to do so. Same thing with your long-term and short-term, for that matter, financial goals. When you're working, hopefully you enjoy your career, but it has to be arduous when it's a stressful career, stressful job, and then you feel like you're working just to pay bills because you're not able to reach those goals that you want to reach. So how do you meet those goals? That's where you want to be discussing with different financial advisors that you may have available to you, either through your school system, researching on your own. I'm going to give you a few resources in my presentation as well, where you can establish 403B plans, which is similar to a 401k. It is a plan. Again, 403B is a tax coding terminology. Also 457 as well. Those are tax coding terminologies, but those are retirement investment accounts, tax sheltered annuity retirement investment accounts, where you have access to those through public school systems, government type of entities. So definitely utilizing those resources, and setting up those accounts. And I'll give you a better idea of how you want to be thinking about in terms of your savings goals as well. So how am I managing my monthly expenses to achieve my financial goals? Am I contributing to Social Security? That's a very important point as well. I'm going to come back to my third bullet point in just a second, but while I'm on the subject of Social Security benefits, so again, this is something that most individuals don't think about, because we all kind of know, well, you got to pay into Social Security. Well, not necessarily. There are some entities, particularly government entities, that are able to opt their employees out of Social Security, paying into Social Security, but that can preclude that individual from having access to draw Social Security benefits when they are retirement eligible. So kind of an old school way of thinking about financial savings in terms of retirement savings is, a pension plan, Social Security, and then, your other investment accounts. Well, for many individuals, the pension plan is not in the equation. For some of you all, although you'll have that pension plan, foreseeably, if this is going to be a long part of your career, but Social Security may not be an option. So you'll want to check with your public school systems, or whichever system you work with, just to verify whether or not you are paying into Social Security. And then a good rule of thumb is, if you're not, then you'll want to. So first and foremost, you definitely want to be contributing to some type of tax sheltered annuity account. So 403B, 457 are kind of the main ones that you'll have access to through the school systems. And then there's a typical, kind of tiering that you want to be thinking about in terms of upping your financial contributions. So to begin off your career, maybe you start off, conservative, 3, 4, 5%, but really you want to be getting up to that 10 to 15 percentile ratio at some point. And then also, if you're not paying into Social Security, you want to factor that into the equation as well. So typically you're looking at somewhere between 6 to 10% in Social Security contributions that would normally be going in. If you're not paying into Social Security, you want to utilize that money into that 403B, 457 plan as well. And again, discussing, you notice I've used the terminology 403B, 457 plan. There's pros and cons to both of those. The 457 plan is a little bit more portable if there's going to be movement in your career from a tax purposes standpoint, that you're able to utilize those funds without having to pay taxes on those funds with having tax penalties. So you'll definitely want to kind of figure out which one or both would work best for you in your situation. And will your TRS benefit be enough to meet my financial goals? Typically, most financial planners will say you'll need somewhere between 75 to 85% of your income when you retire to live comfortably in retirement. And of course, that depends on what your life goals are going to be, post retirement. If you're going to be doing quite a bit of traveling, particularly international, you may need more like 85 to 100% of your current income to live comfortably in retirement. Maybe some folks maybe need a little less, but certainly in that 70 percentile is kind of really the magic number for probably anyone across the board, really. So again, we've talked about the formula in terms of your teacher retirement plan. Most people kind of pinpoint a 30-year career. So 60% of your retirement savings is done through being a TRS member. But, and that's under the maximum plan. So you have to consider that as well, that what plan option am I going with will also dictate if I need to have more cushion in that ratio as well. So considering those factors into the equation. But again, where's the other 20, 30% going to come from? That's where you want to be doing the work on the front end well ahead of time so that you are in a position to be able to retire when you are ready to do so. Going back to that third bullet point, how am I managing my monthly expenses to achieve my financial goals? So again, what I always encourage individuals to do is track their expenses over a 60 to 90-day period of time. And not to disparage what anyone's spending their money on, but a lot of times, sometimes folks will say, well, I can't afford to save towards, this goal or that goal, or they may not put it in that terminology, but basically I'm living paycheck to paycheck. But oftentimes, if you track your spending over that 60 to 90-day period, you'll see, wow, I didn't realize I was spending this much on this particular item, that particular item. Particularly in a cashless, more cashless society where you're just kind of flicking the card here and there, and before you know it, you spent way more money than you realize you're spending. So keeping a good budget, that's kind of a word that a lot of people don't use anymore. So you want to budget. There's nothing wrong with a lot of the advanced technology that we've gotten to, but certainly there's some old school ways of thinking about things too. And that budget word is not a bad word. Definitely utilize that budget to track your spending, make sure you stay within those parameters so that you're able to meet, again, long term, from a teacher retirement standpoint. The majority of what I'm talking about is from a retirement standpoint, but also, a car, a home. And while we're on that subject of a home, any of you all who are homeowners know there's something intrinsic about being a homeowner, but we all know a house is a money pit. There's always something that you're going to have to fix, something that's going to go wrong. When you got kids, there's going to be something that they're going to break. So there's always going to be some money to be spent. And so you want to make sure that you're able to meet those short-term needs as well, so not just goals, also those needs as well. So, how am I tracking my expenses so that I make sure that I've got, emergency savings on tap, vacation savings. One of my colleagues, kind of one of my styles, so to speak, and a lot of my background is from a financial, standpoint. So, I kind of seriously talk about these topics. But one of my colleagues mentions, and I really like this point, is you want to have your financial and your retirement savings plans and goals, but you also want to have your fun goals as well. So, nothing wrong with saving for that vacation. Save towards it, though. Make sure that you're not putting yourself in a financial pitfall to enjoy that trip. So again, frustration, as my theme is, frustrating to have a great vacation and then be paying for it months, maybe even years down the line because you went so credit heavy. You want to manage your credit card debt. Look for good interest rates. 0% interest rates obviously is the best, but also paying off that credit card debt, before you're having to pay interest. So utilizing it to work for you. Having points goals. So we see all these commercials all the time about different incentives. Take advantage of those, but make sure that you're able to utilize them basically as cash. So you're utilizing the credit to get whatever access to, maybe you're going to be able to fund a vacation off of some of those points incentives. So making sure that you're able to meet those goals in a wise, smart way. This is a point that I really don't emphasize on too much, because nobody wants to hear, well, I could work longer to meet those goals. But yes, there is an equation to that. So the longer you work, the larger your benefit potentially could be as well. And then a lot of times, of course, the trajectory of your career, maybe moving, advanced degrees, et cetera, where your salary is going up the back end of your career as well. Here is a good resource, the financialreserveeducation.org, a good resource equipping educators and students to help make some good financial decisions. Again, a lot of folks are apprehensive about talking about finances. We all know it's an important aspect of our life, but it's something that a lot of people don't want to discuss. My wife is an educator, and she is very averse to talking about financial topics. So it puts a lot of the stress on me to manage a lot of those topics, but we also have to have those tough conversations as well. So utilizing these resources that we allot for you all, that we vetted as well, so that we make sure that we're helping you all to make good retirement and long-term, short-term decisions. And I kind of talked about this a little bit just a moment ago, establishing, a fund for a rainy day, establishing short-term, long-term goals as well. So again, the majority of what I'm discussing is more on the long-term aspect, but again, you'll have some short-term goals that you want to be meeting, and making sure that you're able to do that, evaluating, your credit cards, and having that credit debt in line as well. What is called revolving debt. You don't want to have so much revolving debt. Revolving, as it sounds like, just like a revolving door, it just keeps spinning around. So you want to have yourself in a situation where you've got, more flat debt, where you've got your expenses. We all know, again, as if you have a home, likely you're going to have a mortgage, throughout the majority of your life career. A home is just typically too expensive, although if you're able to pay for it in cash, certainly do so, but typically too expensive to not have that debt. But you want to have your mostly your basic expenses, what comes along with owning a home and a car, that kind of thing. You don't want to have so much revolving month to month debt. Also utilizing resources and that are available to having student loans forgiven. Those types of items definitely want to take advantage of. And another reason why you would want to stay in the education field, so that you have that as an access tool. And if your employer does not contribute into Social Security, consider investing in yourself with a defined contribution plan. And while I'm on that terminology, I don't think I defined that as much earlier. I talked about defined benefit, which is what the TRS is. Defined contribution is what you're contributing on your own through tax sheltered annuity, an IRA, both traditional and Roth. Roth IRAs tend to have some better tax benefits, or I shouldn't necessarily say better, some more diverse, I'll say, tax benefits that you may want to consider as well, and other brokerage and investment accounts. And so typically you'll have access with your school system through selected vendors that they have, but also don't just utilize or don't just relay on rely. I'm sorry, I'm got my words mixed up there. But don't just rely on the employer and who they have access to you as well. Also, do your research on your own, so that you make sure that you have made the right plan of action for yourself. Investment options encompass a certain level of risk. So your teacher retirement plan in and of itself is risk-free from your personal standpoint. We're managing the risk on our end. Now, any investments that you're doing on your own, through a financial advisor, you want to get a financial advisor who is vetted and is definitely a certified financial planner. But they'll have a particular plan of action for you, and you want to make sure that you are educated on that plan of action as well, because it is your money that you're going to be investing, and that risk is upon yourself as well. This gives you an idea of the example of compound interest. So for instance, the earlier you start, the longer you have to save towards the retirement benefit, and the better off you're going to be. Never too late, but as you see, the 22-year-old is going to have about $136,000 at retirement versus the 42-year-old with the same amount at the same conservative rate of return. And really, probably a more realistic rate of return would be maybe around the 7 to 10 percentile range. Again, not quoting on that, but that's a more reasonable, but just to give you a basic conservative rate of return at 5%, then that 42-year-old is going to have about $35,000. So $100,000 more over that 20-year period of time that they were saving in advance of the 42-year-old. Another investment resource, a good resource for you guys is investor.org. Investor.gov, which is through the Securities and Exchange Commission. So very reliable, vetted, financially sound resource that we allot to you all. So just wrapping up, I'm kind of getting up against my time here, and definitely want to respect you all's time, but utilize our TRS website, www.trsga.com, to create an account. So you have that available, obviously, on the website, just to look at the website and what we have offered on there at any point. But within the first 2 months after your start date, you're able to create your account, access your own account, and so you'll have access to all kinds of different programs that we have available. Just to give you a quick rundown, so our state mandate is take money in from you all and also school systems, manage that money, make sure it's safe and sound, pay it out to you all when it's time to retire. But again, we offer so many different resources so that we can help you all be a good resource to you so that you're able to retire at the time frame that you're really looking to retire and meet those financial goals. So utilize our Twitter, Facebook accounts. I'm going to pull that up here in just a moment as well. Also consider using cfp.net and napa.org for finding a certified financial planner, and check with your human resources department for information about your career, salary, benefits, in addition to your teacher retirement benefits as well. And definitely utilize us as a resource directly and also indirectly through our partners. So again, like us on Facebook, Twitter, utilize the TRS website. We've got podcasts where we've got an array of information available to you all, both about internally what we do with teacher retirement and also external resources that we have available to you all as well. Utilize our YouTube and StreamYard accounts as well, so that we are able to reach you all where you're at. So wherever you're at, we're trying to meet those, give us feedback so that we know, okay, hey, this platform is something that a lot of individuals are utilizing. Let us know about that so that we can look into getting onto those platforms as well. So definitely utilize all the resources that you have available. Just to give you some further information about this presentation, I have not, just from the presentation standpoint, been able to really monitor the chat. So I do believe I've had some answers that were able to be given to you all through the chat feature. But we'll also be following up with you all. So we're going to do a screen grab, for lack of a better way of putting it, on the chat features so that we'll be able to follow up on answers, and we'll put out information there This presentation is going to be available via our YouTube channel as well. So definitely utilize that. I believe it'll be available. I know it's live on Facebook. I think it may be available for later viewing on Facebook as well, but definitely through our YouTube channel. So definitely utilize all the resources that we have available to you guys. Thank y'all very much for your time. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it, and definitely give us feedback. And thank y'all very much.